Internet of Things company that is basically been built and designed around rolling out a very large-scale ultra-narrowband network in South Africa. But its primary purpose is to really collect data. So what we're doing is we're enabling objects and things to what we say is have a voice. But actually it's really to allow for that, whatever that object is, to be able to communicate back into some form of a system. And if we think about where big data has gone recently, we actually like to talk about what we produce as small data, because it's really small packets of information, but at a very, very large volume of those items. And at the underlying level, if you think about where AI is going, it does rely very, very largely on being able to gather very large volumes of data and process them out of a data lake. So preparing for today, we thought let's try and give you some of the perspective of how IoT integrates into AI systems, but also sketch out a bit of the landscape of where we're seeing some of the big AI plays globally. So I want to start with a small piece of research from a small academic institution in the UK. And they say that the AI revolution could either pull the bottom billion out of poverty and transform dysfunctional institutions, or it could entrench injustice and increase inequality. So the interesting thing about a quote like this, it's almost impossible to be wrong. Right? So they're predicting something in the future, but it's very difficult to be wrong because only one of these two things could actually happen, right? But the key point here is that, and the word I want to focus on is the revolution. They, like many other institutions, are seeing AI as a significant revolution that the world is going through. And that revolution is really talking about shifts, and not small incremental changes, but major shifts into what AI is going to be able to do for any human system, for any natural system, and for any system that inhabits the planet. And this could be anything from, assessing and analyzing water consumption and usage, where IoT plays a role, collecting the data points, but feeding into a much, much broader set of data that can help with sustainability challenges as well. Recently, as recent as earlier this month, Gartner published their top 10 technology trends, as what they call them. And what they've done is they've grouped it into 3 categories. And these 3 categories being intelligence, digital, and mesh. In the intelligent category, they've put a couple of transitions in there, like AI Foundation. So AI Foundation meaning all the foundational elements of what artificial intelligence is able to bring from a transformation perspective in technology. They've also added in their intelligent apps and analytics. So less machine learning there, but more analytics, and of course intelligent things, where they're saying that things become intelligent. And intelligent is sometimes an overstatement when you're talking about an object that's able to simply provide a small piece of information. So I won't call it intelligent, I might just call it connected. Okay, right, we know what is your location, or we know what is your consumption, or we know that you detected a specific pollutant in the air. That's not intelligent, that's just, okay, reporting what I've observed. But, definitions as broad as they can be, it could be considered that one that is observing a phenomena in nature and not able to report it, okay, that's a dumb device. What am I, why does it exist? So I could see why you would, brand something as intelligence. So that's on the first pillar of this technology trend shifts. The second pillar is around digital. And here you have things like digital twin, which again is a feed off into looking at how IoT enables something to exist in the cloud. And this here is one example that comes to mind. I'm not sure if I touch on it later, but maybe I can just do it right now. Actually, I do. So let me skip The third being mesh. And this year is really about the convergence of how artificial intelligence and its associated intelligence capabilities, like the things like the foundational elements of AI, plus what's happening from an application space in the cloud, what's happening from a platform perspective in the cloud, what's happening with immersive experiences like AR and VR, and bringing them together to manage business outcomes. So mesh is really what they're seeing is as a result of the first two pillars, intelligence and digital, coming together to impact on a business outcome of some kind. So that's really where you would get the measurable value that's coming out of these technology shifts. I think what's also interesting about how they're packaging these technology trends is that when AI is spoken about in any one of these environments, it's really seen as an immersive capability that permeates any one of these technology trends and shifts specifically. To the extent that, when we talk about the digital twin, I'll touch on it in a few minutes, it's no use just having a twin of a real life object with how this object is behaving in the natural world if you can't actually glean specific insights from it and use some predictability to impact on making use out of that information that comes from it. So AI is becoming one that really permeates into every single one of these technology shifts, and we'll see a lot more of that in the future. The technology itself, and in terms of how it's actually impacting on specific systems, in relation to other shifts that are happening in the market, you would see a slightly higher acceleration in AI, and not because it's trendy like the internet was back in 2000 when everybody was trying to get connected to the internet, or late, or probably mid to 2010s when cloud started to get significant level of adoption. Here you're getting a combination of what happened during the internet era's real boom, plus large-scale adoption for business systems coming through. So what happened, mid-2010s around cloud? You're seeing ingredients from both. As some of you may recall, late 90s, you had this explosion of the .com bubble that really burst and caused quite a bit of chaos worldwide. Now, you are getting ingredients of that right now, and I'm going to touch a bit on where funding is going and why you're already seeing some signs of what happened in 99, 2000, 2001 in the AI space, but at the same time, what happened in cloud, which are the real business outcome-focused initiatives, you're seeing that from AI. So it's possible that we may have learned, because humans can learn, in spite of popular belief. Humans are able to learn from experiences, and we're seeing some of those learnings in the way AI is being adopted, the way investors are looking at AI, the way businesses are looking at AI. So I wanted to find a very reliable source of aggregation of what could be considered the top 100 AI startups in the world. And there isn't one, right? But there is one who managed to do the work and put all the logos in one place. So I didn't have to build it, which is great. And that's what these guys did. They're called CV Insights. So if you want to look them up, they publish quite a lot of data around spend. They publish a lot of data around investment that's happening in the AI space. And they're also doing some ranking of who the big AI players in the world are. So what they've done here is they've given a very high-level categorization of who the big AI companies are in the world, and also, importantly, who are the startups, because the startups is actually what's attracting attention of some of the very, very large technology companies, and the associated investment is going into these types of businesses specifically. So what you'll see that's missing from this list is there aren't any African startups really in here. Now, I didn't study every single one of them, but the ones that we know of, I don't see them up here. I don't see Cortex here. So Jacques, you've got some work to do. We're not seeing Guy, which is one of the new entrants in this market. But again, there are 2,467 AI companies as of August 2017, right? And that's a big number. But the dominance of those companies is 42% of them specifically happen to be US-centric companies. So when half of them are US-centric, it does mean that, of course, a lot of the big money is going to flow into those businesses because they are reaching scale. And they also happen to exist in an environment where lots of companies are able to come up with one narrowly focused solution, developing a very, very specific set of intellectual property that might be solving a tiny little issue for a very large company like a Google, or like a Cisco, or like an Apple, and they end up buying this thing and rebranding it as Siri, as an example. Right? So that there was a tiny little startup that produced the mechanism to what we have today as Siri. So they also migrate to there to be able to start those businesses up. So it's important that we, try and remain relevant, contact the CBE Insights guys and say, hey, here's what we're doing on the continent. In transitioning to maturity, and not by any means, none of these are mature businesses with hundreds of people generating billions of revenue or hundreds of millions of revenue as yet. But they do stand out amongst the startups. They do stand out amongst all of the other AI companies that have made some level of progress. So what are the ingredients that make these guys stand out? So the guys that are on this slide specifically have already got $1 billion valuation. Right? So $1 billion valuation, there's this term that gets used all over the world called unicorn, which is something that's supposed to be rare. You don't see them, but there's so many unicorns in the world today. Okay, so you can't exist and not be a unicorn. You're like, okay, I exist to become a unicorn, and you can see it and touch it and feel it. But the point about what these guys have done, so what they've done is they have solved a specific challenge for a business environment. It's implemented, they have a revenue stream, they have people physically doing work. They're not just doing lab stuff. They're not just doing stuff that, no offense to the lab stuff, because it's required in order to solve real problems. You're still going to do the lab stuff. But why these guys have attracted a valuation of $1 billion, and how they got to their valuation is basically they were funded. So somebody bought 10% of this company for $100 million. Hey, guess what? This company is now worth $1 billion. So not from a revenue perspective, but just purely from a valuation. They've done two things. The first is they've solved some specific business challenge and have demonstrated a revenue stream that somebody is willing to pay some amount of money for the service that they're delivering. That's the first thing that they've done. And it's important that for those that are in the AI space, for those that are considering entering the space, for those that are physically doing research in AI, it's always important to think about what is that monetization capability that I need to undertake. And you can't do it after the research. You need to do it in parallel to that. You have to have a monetization stream or thinking process to say, how do I actually monetize this? Because when you do engage in that monetization conversation, you then begin to ask relevant questions that businesses would typically ask of you when you try to solve a problem for a business. So monetization is critical. They may not have worked out. So for example, since time, they didn't have a mature business model that they took to the funder. What they were able to do was able to attract some revenue into their business by solving a specific issue. But they didn't really have a very mature business model that says, this is how I charge. I charge either on a license basis, I charge based on the savings that I generate from the problem that I solve. They didn't really have that. What they did have, though, is the ability to attract some kind of an income for problems that they're solving. So that's ingredient one. The second ingredient is sometimes underestimated, is the level of uniqueness of what I've done and the ability to articulate that uniqueness in a way that I might be able to fill out a document that says intellectual property rights protection. So if you're able to fill out a document where you're capturing what that intellectual property is that you think you've created, you're able to answer, and you can download many of these. If you're able to complete a document like that, it means that there's possibility that you might have solved something that is unique. You might have created some unique ability in your business. And that's important, to be able to demonstrate those two things, revenue stream and then capturing some of this IP into a physical form that you have to fill it out for a submission. Then I think those are the two critical ingredients to be able to get to valuations. And every single one of these have done that. Some of them are non-traditional AI companies, but they've hired a couple of data scientists, DJI, perfect example, drone company, video analytics company, hired some data scientists, they built some capability, and they were able to monetize it through a very, very specific set of hardware that they took to the market. So the customer was an internal customer, but there was value being able to be created for that. Here's a very quick picture on the funding, and there's an important point here. It says disclosed funding in millions of dollars. So these are the deals where funding was disclosed. In other words, company X raised X number of millions of dollars, and this is the percentage it attracted. Even if it didn't show the percentage, at least this was disclosed. There's lots of deals that take place that are not disclosed, even by the very, very large technology companies, because they don't have to, right? They put it through a marketing budget. If you think of a Google marketing budget, it's not small. You could buy a bunch of companies with that money. So what's important on this picture is to note that over the last couple of years, the number of companies, so that blue line on the top, where the number of deals that took place for specific companies has increased significantly. So this is ending in 2016. So last year, 658 deals took place at a value of about $5 billion of funding that went into businesses. So this is not total market size, this is just how much of funding was injected into AI-related companies and AI companies themselves. In 2017, as of July this year, that number, that $5 billion was the annual number. So in July this year, that number is already sitting at $6 billion for the first 7 months of the year. It's projected to end around $9.5 to $10 billion this year in terms of deals that were funded from various types of companies. And this includes traditional VCs, angel investors, banks, large technology companies. But the important point on this is that it's a lead indicator that the AI industry and the participants in the AI industry are sufficiently mature enough to be attracting this level of funding. This level of funding doesn't go into an industry if there isn't real value going to be created. Nobody's just taking a bet here. I mean, these are very mature VCs that have gone through the dot-com bubble. They've gone through the cloud issues of 2008 to 2012. They've gone through multiple network transitions that happened. They've gone through the mobile industry investment cycles. So they know what kind of questions to ask before they say, here's a check for $50 million, we'll talk to you in 10 months. They are a much more mature investment market than we had back in 2000. And rightly so. Lots of people lost lots of money back then. So I think what I'd like you to leave you with is this slide. That picture in the middle is a squid representative of our logo. In IoT businesses, we're working across multiple verticals. And in every single one of these verticals, value truly only gets created and delivered when there is some analytics, there is some AI, there is some machine learning, there is some processing capability, some algorithm that's able to tell you that the Western Cape province is consuming this level of water, assuming we were able to collect the consumption on a real-time basis, which we can right now with product if somebody allows us to install some meters. but you're able to immediately determine what consumption looks like. You're able to immediately pass that into a processing ability and determine a couple of important aspects. You'll be able to determine what consumption levels are at every point in the day. You'll be able to predict what kind of usage you're going to get. You're going to be able to use information of forecasted rainfall. You're able to use information of what dam levels are to determine exactly what kind of control you need to have on the ground in order to sustain that resource for more than 3 months, or 4 months, or 5 months. So that kind of information for a municipality or for a country is invaluable. And it can't be done without a significant level of artificial intelligence processing, using, of course, intelligent algorithms to process this very, very large volume of data. And I can pick up any one of these verticals that we got on the board here. And we can tell you that right now, there is a solution of some kind that's implemented either in a rudimentary way or in a valuable way. So one of the companies we're working with is a vehicle tracking company. And they, of course, collect lots of data, and some of them have a monetization stream where they provide that data feed to traffic apps, and you're able to see congestion and speeds and time of destinations, etc. But they've taken it a step further, and recently there was a big mall that opened in Midrand called the Mall of Africa. They were able to determine, just from the tracking data, which suburbs vehicles came from, what vehicle came from there. Were they Mercedes SUVs? Were they Toyota Corollas? What kinds of vehicles that came across all the suburbs of Gauteng that came to this mall specifically? How much of time they spent in that mall? Where did they come? Where did they stop? Which shopping malls or shopping centers or stores did they stop at before they got to the mall? Where did they stop after they left the mall? And that's pretty insightful data for somebody who wants to do something useful with it, to determine how do I alter that shopping experience if I could alter it in some meaningful way. So the ability to collect that data and then process it exists today. The ability to connect every single object to provide you with data sets exists today. The network that we've deployed now covers about 70% of the population in South Africa, and it's ultra narrowband, so it's small amounts of data, but it's pervasive and ubiquitous enough that allows us to collect an enormous amount of data and feed it into various systems to solve problems within specific verticals. Okay, thank you.
Any questions before we get Benji on here? That's good. Yep.
Question. So when do you know that you are an AI company? What's so different from, or what makes you an AI company?
Yeah, you register a domain.ai and then you're an AI company, and then you add some Google words on your webpage and then you're an AI company. Because that's the measure we've seen out there. But I mean, truly to understand what you're actually doing as a company, I mean, are you using specific algorithms? Are you using deep learning on a data set to solve a problem? I think those are the real determinants. But for now, the real measure is, does it say it on my website, the brochure, where, what's my domain name? That's the only measure right now.
And then just what do you think now recently, why is it in vogue at the moment to be an AI company? Or what's enabling it to, I think you really touched on it in this last slide. What's actually happening? What has happened in the last couple of years that it's now?
It's this picture, yeah. Where's the money going, right? So when the big money follows the technology trend. The technology trend has it actually has a vicious circle with where the money is going, because the more money goes into it, the more, of course, it grows, and so the trend will follow the money will follow the trend. So it's really about the money.
And in terms of technologies, you said there's new enabling technologies.
So I think why AI now, I should have actually, I thought I touched it in my title slide, I should have touched on it there. The three things that happen. The first is the ability to collect massive amounts of data we're using IoT and other mechanisms. So now you have the ability to have the data and store them in data lakes or wherever. That's one. The second thing is the processing power and the cost per processing power, let's call it that, is come down so significantly that you have access to very large machines that can crunch this volume of data, and it's not at a unreachable price point. And then the third is the advancement in algorithms and the real AI work. Your earlier question about how do you do AI, the real advancement from researchers at various institutions that have been spending their time and effort to really solve and advance algorithms that have been developed, the ones that get made available to everybody else, the advancement in those algorithms. Those three things have allowed for AI to get to where it is right now. All three things are happening right now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think Benji, it's officially you. I just want to quickly ask, you just mentioned a separate one. It was quite absolutely agree with everything you said. Interesting example is Element AI. You know about that one? Got $102 million investment from consortium, Microsoft, NVIDIA, etc. Just talent. There was no product, nothing yet. If you look at Google DeepMind, there's no revenue, so you do get those kind of exceptions, but it's driven by the hype. And it turned out to be a good investment to Google DeepMind. But we'll see what Element AI. Anyway, fantastic talk. Thank you very much. Benji, it's yours. And while Benji's coming, I just want to quickly say, this was the man who's going between my broadband conference, Gallagher Estate. That's right. Yeah.